All right, you guys, this is for April 26th through April 30th. This is the week that we will be finishing our demonstration speeches. Don't forget to complete your reflection to your demo speech because that's something you do for each speech, and then they are graded at the end when you turn in your journal with a couple other items that you did along the way. We might do an impromptu speech this week if we get time, probably on the 28th, 29th, maybe. I'm going to talk today about the chapter 9 slides or the chapter 10 reading. I'm going to go through some slides that I would normally do in class with you and some activities. And don't forget to watch the verbal visual speech that I sent you on 419. That goes over the next speech after demonstration speeches. And you will be drawing your quote off the front cupboard or board by probably today or the next day, sometime within this week, because those verbal visual speeches start on May 3rd and 4th. So as you think about chapter 10, we read about rhetorical devices, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Slang and jargon, we will be working on a Quizlet and a quizzes in class for rhetorical devices when we get done with our demonstration speeches. Also, remembering in chapter 10 that language is powerful. Words that you choose affect the effectiveness of public speaking. It should be clear and appropriate for your audience. So when I talked about Walter the farting dog, that wouldn't be appropriate for certain audiences. But as class members, you would know that it's appropriate for your grade, and many of you already do know me. So keeping that in mind, that it be appropriate for your audience. You do have to know your audience before you say certain things. And you also want to be careful not to kind of rip on people in the audience and kind of tear them down, because that's not professional. So you want to be really careful of that, even if it's funny. You wouldn't want to refer to people or their names. Language is clear, appropriate. We're going to explore rhetorical devices. What is connotation versus denotation, euphemisms, and abstract language, all from chapter 10. I shared the chapter 10 slideshow with you, so you can go through that on your own. I'm not going to go through that at this time. And I will do this quizzes with you for the review of rhetorical devices after our demonstration speeches. Again, denotative and connotative, we'll look at a little practice in class with Quizlets. I might try to also add those links within the Distance Learn folder just in case we don't get to them. Euphemism and abstract language practice, and literal versus figurative language. Remember, denotative language is exactly what a word means in the dictionary. Connotative is different. It has different connotations. For example, if you bought a cheap necklace versus an inexpensive necklace, they both mean that they didn't cost a lot of money, but one has a connotation that's negative and one is positive. So like cheap would be negative. Inexpensive would be more positive. So denotation versus connotation. Language can be used for power, and language choices affect the effectiveness of public speaking. Therefore, you have to be clear and appropriate for your audience. Again, do you mean to say cheap or do you mean to say inexpensive? So it's choosing your words carefully. Today, we will look at literal versus figurative language while reviewing specific figurative language. So there are some games that I'll do with you in class for these concepts today, 1 through 5. Euphemism, what is it? So if you think to yourself, you probably learned it if you read the chapter, what is euphemism? This is a language device often used to make something unpleasant sound more tolerable. For example, air support in the Vietnam War meant bombing, or revenue enhancement means tax increases. So the listing on the left, of course, is more feasible or more pleasant for something unpleasant. And think to yourself, can you think of any other euphemisms where something, has been made pleasant sounding or tolerable for something unpleasant? Common euphemisms. Uncle Keith died last year. You don't say that. You would say Uncle Keith passed away last year. You wouldn't say, I have to urinate. This is kind of a different one. I have to spend a penny. That's kind of old-fashioned. You're an idiot. You have an interesting point of view. So it's something unpleasant. Obviously, you wouldn't call somebody that. You would say, well, you're very interesting. Go away. Instead of being negative or mean, you'd say, I just need a little peace and quiet. So euphemism is making something unpleasant sound a little more pleasant. Abstract language is language that evokes many different visual images in the minds of your audience. So it's visual. It's language that you use to create a picture in someone's mind. For example, art. You could say dance, theater, painting, drama, child's drawing, sculpture, music. That makes art much more concrete. It's not just about drawing or a picture. So abstract language helps us to visualize and understand as a reader or a participant in a speech or presentation. So for example, concrete would be glass, house, leaf, sword, book, pumpkin. You can see it, hear it, taste it, touch it, smell it. Abstract, they're kind of the feeling types of words. You don't really know exactly what they mean, such as deceit, love, pity, victory, democracy, or truth. They're not cut and dried. They're not clear like concrete words. Literal versus figurative. Again, I'll try to share some of these prezzies or different quizzes in the links in the Distance Learn folder. Simile and metaphor, cliche, and sensory language, also called imagery. So, connect the nouns. Sometimes we would maybe do this in class if we get a little extra time after the demonstration speeches, or even, after your verbal visuals. I'm going to get you two nouns. You'll connect them, and you have to try to connect the two nouns, coming up with ideas to make connections. So we might get to that one. You might use euphemisms, similes, those use like or as. Metaphors use usually is or was, their direct comparison, but they don't use like or as. Or sensory language. We might get to that, like I said. Okay, so you should know the example of connotation versus denotation. You should know what a euphemism is. Cliche. When you think of something cliche, usually there's a little apostrophe like over the E. If something's cliche, it's kind of overused. Like, that's so cliche. Everybody says that. That is a cliche. What is concrete language? Concrete is very direct. You understand exactly what it is. Abstract language is questionable. What exactly does that mean? Because they're kind of more of the emotional or feeling type of words, such as democracy, happiness. How is abstract language positive in communication? I suppose sometimes it can kind of lend people to think of it how they want. Maybe it lets people explore different things in their mind or ideas. And then simile, metaphor, to remember what those are. And again, I also shared the slideshow with you for all of your chapters. Remember, simile compares two things using like or as. He drives that truck like Kyle Busch at Daytona. Okay, it makes it very vivid and descriptive. Even if you didn't know who Kyle Busch is, you would know that he is a race car driver because of the Daytona. Love is like a battlefield. You know what a battlefield is, and there it's comparing it to love. Metaphors are a little bit more difficult. It's the same, somewhat like a simile. Idea is something as being the same as some unrelated thing for rhetorical effect. He is Kyle Busch at Daytona when he gets behind the wheel of that truck. So that's how that person drives, like Kyle Busch. But you can't say like or as. You have to say usually is or was. Love is a battlefield, so love being compared to the battlefield without using like. That makes a metaphor. Cliches, expressions using similes that are predictable. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. That's cliche because everybody says it. Now, cliches kind of change based on age, and some things get old-fashioned, some sayings, or some cliches are so old you wouldn't understand them. Imagery, sensory language, of course, that's using all your senses, not just visual. And then again, I will share this rhetorical devices with you. We'll either work on it in class or sharing it online. So, language is a tool that humans use. It's separate from their identities. That's false, okay? It is part of who we are and how we think. So, our language is a tool that is separate from their identities. That is a false statement. Language is not something we use. It is a part of who we are and how we think. When we talk about language, we have to use words to do so, and language is also hard to separate from who we are. So here's another concept of review. Frida is speaking to a group of college students about advising. It is time to get an IRA when you reach an AAE of $30,000. This is an ineffective concept because it's not appropriate to the audience. She's talking to a group of college students. She's using concepts such as IRA and AAE. So this is actually a concept not for college students. It would be an older group of students. So again, you have to know your audience when you're speaking about something. Here we have revenue enhancement. Of course, that's an example of euphemism. It makes something that's not pleasant seem more tolerable, and powerful person type of language that is used. Not only is language about who we are, it is about power, or at least it is used by powerful people. So the way you use your words can give you power. And you know that, especially if you go to interviews and how you speak, or to develop people's opinions to agree with you. It depends on the words that you choose and how you come across. In fact, some educational and political theorists believe that language is all about power. Those first words that come out of your mouth say a lot about you and how you state it. Again, I shared the chapter 9-10 slideshows with you. Jargon and slang, it's kind of, they're the same. Jargon is like professional slang. For example, doctors have a jargon, a certain word or vocabulary that they use. Teachers do. All professions do. And then slang is kind of sometimes by a group or certain region of people. Again, I'll share this Quizlet. Rhetorical techniques. Make sure that you know what assonance is, repetition using vowel sounds, alliteration, antithesis, parallelism, anaphora, hyperbole. Okay, so what is parallelism? Make sure you understand what that is, and antithesis and anaphora. Okay, so you can find those out in the in your slideshows and in your reading. So the other speech that's coming up will be the energy speech. I'm not going to talk about it right now in this slideshow. And I am going to get out of my slideshow at this time. So let's go back here. And I hope that you are able to get through your chapters. Email me if you have any questions. After your speech, of course, you'll be doing a speech reflection. And that is our review for chapters 9 and 10. And make sure you go through the slideshow and other videos or different links.